All right, we are going to hear from three educators from Westwood who asked to speak collectively. So you get one set of buzzers. Then I believe that Representative Orl is here. If you'd like to come up the front row, you'll be next, so we can start to move along pretty quickly.
I am jealous that you guys have sandwiches.
I haven't tried it yet, so you never know. I wasn't sure, so I brought my own granola bar because we're doing the last time. Thank you.
My name is Kyle Grady. I'm the interim principal at Thurston Middle School in Westwood. I'm also a resident of Ashland. I was the primary testing coordinator for the park assessment in grades 6 to 8 in Westwood. We performed the test entirely on Chromebooks. My goal here today is to give you some practical feedback. I have 7 points. Let me first say that I'm in full support of the park assessment. It is generally a much better assessment than MCAS, but it still needs to evolve in several areas. Some bugs were expected, however, everyday students encountered new and sometimes complicated problems. This often exacerbated the anxiety of already anxious test takers. The survey at the end of the assessment, although potentially helpful to you and Pearson, utilized additional classroom time and extended the testing window. The keyboarding expectation for elementary age children is too high. These students have minimal or non-existent keyboarding skills, therefore many were not able to complete written portions within the testing time limits. Along with that, many students lost their entire essays when their computers would trip up or shut down. Test administrators were explicitly told in the instruction manual to not help students. This was problematic when students encountered difficulty manipulating the accessibility features. An example of this would be the highlighting function. I received personally a constant stream of park administrative bulletins. These should be consolidated into fewer and more concise communications with building principals. Finally, the timing of the park and science MCAS is challenging. We halted all park testing midstream in order to administer the MCAT test. It would be less disruptive if the testing windows were further apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask you a question. Did you provide feedback to Pearson or any along the way? What kind of response did you get to some of these issues? We've had testimony prior hearings about the hotline and responsiveness in other districts, but I'd be interested in your experience.
I have to say I was a little disappointed with the feedback that we would receive from Pearson. We would often bypass, and I have to give a shout out to a gentleman, Scott Kelly, who works for the Department of Education. He was basically my go-to person. I would bypass calling Pearson and call him directly, and several 11th-hour issues that cropped up, and he was very helpful in sorting that out. But unfortunately, Pearson was not as helpful as oftentimes after a long, lengthy conversation, we found ourselves back where we were at the beginning without any clear knowledge of what to do.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Lett. I'm the Technology Director for the Westwood Public Schools. Our district has invested heavily in technology. We had enough devices to administer the test to 1,500 students in grades 3 through 8. Generally speaking, we made it through testing, and it appears that student responses were correctly recorded and uploaded to the Pearson test site. However, there were a number of challenges that I'd like to communicate at this time. First and foremost, our technology staff was consumed with the park administration collectively for about 6 weeks. This included configuring devices, training teachers, conducting the park infrastructure trial, and supporting teachers during the PBA and EOY test windows. During this time, our tech coaches were unable to perform their usual work of assisting teachers with the integration of technology in the curriculum. Additionally, we corralled all available devices, including those that are strictly intended for use with instruction. This resulted in a compounding effect. Those students that were not actively testing did not have technology available to them during the test windows. We have made great efforts to encourage the thoughtful incorporation of technology in the curriculum, and teachers were forced to alter their instructional approach during Park. In my assessment, we need to be a one-to-one district to sustain this type of testing environment with minimal impact. While Westwood has the resources to move forward with this model, I have grave concerns as to the ability of other districts across the Commonwealth to do the same. Students faced several challenges dealing with the Park that had no connection to their actual knowledge of the curriculum. These included, but are not limited to, difficulties using the equation editor, confusion around directions such as highlighting text in the passage, the need to frequently restart devices, and questions not rendering correctly in TestNav. In short, all aspects of Park, TestNav, Pearson, Access Next, and customer support are still in need of a significant overhaul. While I'm not opposed to the concept of computer-based testing, it's just not ready for prime time.
Good evening. I'm Allison Borchers, the Acting Assistant Superintendent of the Westwood Public Schools, and I'd like to offer a few additional thoughts about Park. It's important to acknowledge that in Westwood, prior to testing, many people were excited about some features of Park. We thought time limits on testing meant less loss of instructional time, that seamless integration of accommodations would give students with disabilities the chance to test with their classmates, that questions would align with rigorous new standards, and that the computer-based format would get us results faster. Our experience this spring has been eye-opening. I'm not really going to speak to test content because we have limited experience because we've only seen the practice items in detail. The administrative workload involved in giving these tests was massive, and the many hours our principals and technology coaches spent grappling with the Access Next website were hours that they weren't engaged in the work of improving teaching and learning. Our staff found Pearson customer support to be of limited value, as you've heard. Call processing was slow, and solutions did not always work. Pearson's user interface is clunky and not at all intuitive for administrators, teachers, or kids. My favorite example, the highlighter in person works differently than any on-screen highlighter anywhere that we can find. By way of contrast, I'd like to point to NAEP, which we've administered in computer-based format several times during the past few years. The NAEP interface is significantly easier for both adults and kids to use and could be looked to as an example for redesign. We're also concerned that some of the universal design features are not functioning in a way that is helpful to kids. The speech-to-text feature, for example, only allows students to play a recording from start to finish. Students can't pause the audio or restart from a particular point in the passage. Finally, we learned last week that Park results will be available even later than MCAS results. This means a delay in our ability to analyze the impact of our instruction and target areas where we can improve. More significantly, it means a delay in identifying children who might need intervention programming. In conclusion, although Park has announced changes that I think will be positive, I encourage the board and department to take the following steps. One, please make sure that the total assessment time per student is reasonable. And in doing so, please think about the impact as DDMs. I'd like to echo Andrew Watt's statement from earlier. Number two, please make sure Pearson is committed to improving their customer support. Three, I'd encourage you to stick with paper-based testing until Pearson redesigns and creates a better product. And finally, please take steps to ensure a quick turnaround time for reporting results. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Just a quick question. You make passing reference to the switch to a time test. Can you talk a little bit more about what the impact of that was?
Sure. I mean, we were optimistic that a time test would actually shorten the window because we did also see the phenomenon of kids taking it all day long in an untimed environment. But it actually, the number of tests, the number of test sessions, and then the back-to-back test windows. There's really only about 2 or 3 weeks in between the PPA and the EOY. Basically, it was a wash, if anything.
Thank you. Representative? Thank you. Come on.
Hi, my name is Keiko Oral. I'm the state representative representing the communities of Lakeville, Middleborough, Berkeley, and Taunton. I want to thank you, Mr. Secretary, Commissioner Chester, Chairman Sagan, and the board members for offering this forum for the public to offer their opinions. I know that we're not going to get to everyone tonight, but I think that you can surmise from the crowd that from the buttons that most of them are opposed to park and moving forward with it, and are in favor of less testing and more learning. Representative D'Amelia sends his regrets. He did have meetings in Boston. He represents Bridgewater and wishes that he could be here. My comments will be brief. I'm pro-technology, I'm pro-high standards, and I'm pro-transparency. My main issue, and Commissioner Chester will attest to this, has been the cost. The cost associated with the initiatives, transparency for the taxpayers. And so in April of 2014, I filed legislation. I've met one-on-one with the commissioner. I've talked to multiple people in the Department of Education asking for a simple spreadsheet of how much is this going to cost each community? How much is this going to cost the community of Acton, Boxford, Bridgewater, Canton, Dedham? How much is the technology piece going to cost? Now, to be fair, Commissioner Chester's office did get back to me, but it was with a broad type of approach to the technology, noting that it will be $75 million statewide. It's not clear to me how much my communities will be looking at. So, because I did not get the information, I decided to start my own spreadsheet. And it started with some of my communities. I asked them simple questions. If the board makes a decision this fall, will you be ready to move forward with this decision? Do you have the technology in place? Do you need the hardware? Are your teachers ready to do this? And some of my communities got back to me and said, yes, we're ready. But the communities that didn't, that are not ready, are who I'm here on behalf of, because the community of Middleborough, the IT person there, said they are not ready, and they will need $1 million to get ready. And I'm afraid that if we move forward with this initiative in the fall, they'll have to opt to a paper pencil version. And I'm not sure when Middleborough will have the funding available to move to a paper, to a computerized version, which I believe is the goal of the park testing. So with the $38 million that was appropriated in the bond bill, $5 million has been appropriated, and 8 lucky school districts have been the recipients of that money. Middleborough wasn't one of them. They applied for that, but they didn't receive it. So again, my concern continues to be the cost. That's number one. Number two, the 2 systems that will still be in place. If we adopt PARC, the Science MCAS will still be in place. How much sense does that make? I'm really trying to figure out how we're going to accommodate the 2 different types of testing assessments, and if we're going to be moving towards a science-based, computerized science-based assessment. Number 3, other states, like Ohio, are considering changes. I brought a clipping from the Cincinnati Enquirer from May of last month. They're considering changes in the House and Senate. They fully adopted PARC. Out of the 26 states that went into the consortium, there are about 12 left. And so, again, we need to carefully consider what other states are experiencing. They're experiencing computer glitches, too much time on testing, and that's why they're looking to make changes in Ohio. Number 4, the paper pencil versus computer version. If we move forward this fall, not every single district will be ready to do the computer version. So therefore, there will be some districts doing paper pencil and some doing computer. I would like to see the psychometric standards that show that those two systems are equal. Because that's what's happening in Ohio, they're being compared as equal. I do not see how a computer version is the same as a paper pencil version. When I attended the Park forum for teachers where they explained how this test would take place, they showed a YouTube at the 8th grade level of Amelia Earhart. I don't see how watching a YouTube answering questions is the same as looking at a piece of paper, reading a selection on Amelia Earhart and answering questions. The inequity among the school districts. I've already mentioned that if we move forward with this initiative, not everyone will be on the same page. This is a justice issue, a fairness issue, and there are some districts that are wealthier than others, and some districts will have no problem moving forward with this new initiative. The reality is we can't assure that across the board people will be able to afford this new initiative. And so in closing, my questions for the board to consider as you make this decision is, do you know the costs of park for each community? Number 2, can each community be assured that they will have the resources they need? I do not believe we cannot move forward and figure that piece out later. We're already strapped at the municipal level for funding, and we cannot figure that out later. So I would urge the board to not move forward with Park this fall. We're simply not ready.
Before I apologize, I would call you up at the same time. State Rep Viola is here as well. Thank you.
I just came in from Boston and
The usual 10-15 minutes, right?
10 to 15 minutes. It's quite busy, but thank you, Commissioner, Secretary, board members. I'm here today, and I just really want to stop where my colleague, Representative Morrow, finished, which is, I do not believe we are ready this fall. And I really come from my district, Fall River. We talk about fairness and parity. I'm not speaking for our superintendent. I'm not speaking for, well, let me ask you something. How many, just raise your hand if you are a teacher in the room. Okay. So, interesting. I'm very glad to see teachers because they're the people who've been communicating to me individually, one-on-one. I think it's important. I didn't think we would have as many teachers because I know how taxed they are every day in the classroom and with their schoolwork, they bring it home. But in a community like Fall River, and you know, Commissioner, you're very familiar. I mean, the mandates, never mind the mandates that our school systems are dealing with, and you know, we're all responsible for that. But when you look at the socioeconomic differences as well in a community like the Fall River, that we have the English language learners, we don't have the technology. Many of our students don't have the advantage of the technology at home. Many of them are having a difficult time grasping the work now. I mean, we are not the strongest school system, while we've made strides, and our educators and our superintendent, as you know, are moving in the right direction. We're not there. We're just not ready yet. And it was funny coming down here tonight. I said, how do I really feel? And I said, I just don't feel we know enough. And so to go from a system that we feel isn't bringing our students to where we need them to be college ready, and I understand that, there's just too many unanswered questions. Whether it's finances, whether it's technology in the classroom, whether it's teacher time out of the classroom, the mix of some MCAS, some PARC, parents not even having an idea of the results from last year. No one really has enough information yet, and we know other communities that have opted out. I want the best for our students, but we're not there yet. And I don't think it's been vetted enough. I don't think we have enough information. I don't think we have the technology in all our schools to handle it. And who is it going to fall back on? Not only the stress of the students, for the teachers. And it's going to come back on them. And they're going to be the responsible parties on something that we put on them too fast, too soon. And I don't think our system is ready to handle it. So I say slow down a little bit, take a closer look at the results that we've had, run it through maybe some other testing or trial periods, and listen to our educators. So many of them don't come because they don't want to muddy the waters. They don't want to go against their superintendent. They don't want to, maybe, and I'm not saying you don't do that as a rule, but I hear that from my teachers. I don't really want to get involved, but let me tell you, we can't do this. There's no time as it is in the classroom. And in a community like Fall River, with this K through 2, we've got 31 kids in a classroom. That's unconscionable to think that we're going to now put this extra burden and we're not prepared. And so I just came here to say, Commissioner, that I believe that we need to provide the best for our students, but we are not ready yet for PARC.
So we're going to move to the lightning round. In the interest of having a curfew here, I'm not going to take a break, so members up here need to get up for a minute. Just do that on your own. Call 3 names and then 3 more to please sit up there so we can move quickly. So Patrick Toohey, again, I apologize if I get names wrong. Linda Twist, thank you. And Tammy Johnson, please come up first. Then maybe on deck. There are 2 names on this card. I don't know if you intend to split the time, otherwise just pick one of you. Michael McLeod and Brian Bezenso and Kalpana Gutman and Katie Collins to come up front. So please tell us where you're from and Mr. Toohey.
Hello, I'm Patrick Toohey. I'm from the town of Norfolk, Massachusetts. One of the 11 towns that had town meetings for ballot questions that voted their towns to direct the state to revert back to the MCAS standards and get rid of Common Core and PARC. More states will be voting on it in the future. I want to thank you for having these forums, although I think that 3 is too late. I believe that 3 is too late. They should have been done during the Patrick administration. The Patrick administration and the Department of Education signed on to these standards without any public forums in the middle of the summer of 2010. I think it was wrong to do that, especially since the MCAS standards in the 90s went through lengthy scrutiny with the public, teachers, and higher education. A little background about myself. I'm a product of progressive engineering and education. I went to Boston Public Schools in the late 70s and the early 80s during the forced busing, which basically took a really good school system and destroyed it by bringing some kids from one side of town to the other side of town and basically taking parents right out of schools. Also taking civic education right out of school as well. I've learned a lot since that time. I've done a lot of self-education. I've worked with some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the world. I didn't graduate high school, I got a GED. I never went to college. But I did a lot of self-education. And I found out there was a lot of education in that time when I was in high school that wasn't being taught. And I see it's still happening. Cursive, something that I think is very important, especially in the younger grades, is being totally ignored. My 13-year-old daughter basically she can write her name. You're focusing on typing on keyboards for 6- and 7-year-olds when their frontal lobe haven't been fully developed yet. I got studies, piles of them in this notebook here that's saying that cursive is very important in the development of young minds, not computers. I'm amazed that our generation and above have gone to where we are without computers and assessment testing. How did we get here? Seriously. Foundational learning in the old way of doing things is essential to becoming technologically advanced. How did Bill Gates be Bill Gates? Did he have computers then? No, he helped with Windows software. How did Steve Jobs become Steve Jobs? He didn't have a computer in school, he didn't take assessment testing. He did reading and he did handwriting, cursive handwriting. who's a if you read him, he wouldn't allow iPads in his, kids wouldn't allow to use technology at all. Technology, I believe, is a wonderful thing. I've been involved in it for 25 years. In its proper tool. It is not it's not the cure-all for kids to learn. It is not the cure-all. Every day, more and more people are waking up to what's happening.
Just to model the new shot clock, that's 3 minutes, so I'll give you a little more time, but that's...
Oh, you're smart. Every day, more and more people are waking up. As you can see, this forum is full. People are waking up, and they're finding out that Common Core is a bill of goods that was sold to us. Controlling the education, not Pearson Publishing with a UK-based company who's making money per test. That's why they want all the grades. Controlling our schools.
That's true.
Thank you very much. I will have to get back to my... Thank you. House of Common Core.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Johnson. I'm a parent of 2 daughters. One daughter that's 24 years old that went through the MCAS system, and a daughter of a 10-year-old that is currently going through the PARC system. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher since 1993 and have been through a lot of changes, and some good and some tough. And currently, I'm an educational leader. I have been, within the last couple of years, part of a leader in the EAPC, Education Association of Plymouth Copper. I also have been a board member of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. Education has been my life, and children are not getting what they deserve. I am one of those people that is waking up. Again, I was one of those elementary school teachers. I taught 5th grade for 9 years when I started out, and I just went with the flow, and I was told it wasn't going to go away. This is what's going to happen. Well, I'm going to turn the tables. I'm not going away. I want to reclaim education. I believe in school improvement and work hard towards developing the best possible environment for our students. I love to try new pedagogy, love to differentiate instruction. I have been embracing PBIS, positive behavior intervention. I understand change is good, but the PARC test doesn't test for college and career readiness. Unless I don't see it, where it's not transparent, it is run by a business. It tests ELA, math, arguably higher order thinking skills. It is not testing workplace readiness, qualities and strategies that are in the own document from BESE. It doesn't teach students attendance. As a matter of fact, I think it's going to do the reverse. Kids that want to do well in school are not going to come in to take this test. It doesn't teach appearance. It doesn't teach motivation. Motivation is the key to get children learning. The more testing we have in the classroom is going to take this away from them. Those are the things that we need to prepare for our teach. Those are the things we need time to teach. Are the tests pushing students away? I'm asking you. Does the PARC measure college and career readiness? Are these students necessarily ready to get a job and go to college? We see the MCAS, the higher end people were up here and they talked about how that the students are not prepared. I'm not sure testing is the way. I'm sorry, I'll go right. Our schools are in dire need of renovation for safety reasons and technological devices. I'm in one of the school districts in Carver that doesn't have all the money, and we had those devices taken away from our classroom instead of being used for learning. Young children need to have experience that motivate curiosity, that become part of a long-term memories in order to succeed in school. The 6th grade students I see in front of me, I see full of anxiety, more so than they have in the past. Let our children learn about the schools, about technology first, and how to use it for the love of learning, not testing. Park test practices not development appropriate. The entire staff in January of the Carver Carver School District took the practice test that aligned with either a subject area or grade level. All the teachers felt the practice tests were inappropriate. Math teachers took at least 3 hours, well past the 90-minute time in taking that test. Again, I understand these are the old test items, but it's not going in the right direction. Time. After listening to all this testimony of how much time that our administrators and teachers and educators spent towards just administering and implementing the test, it's just incredibly unbelievable. We need those administrators to help us support in the classroom, to help us support our students to learn, not to implement a test. We need to step back. I urge you, I know, I'm so sorry, I have more and I'm skipping. The park does not, it's not transparent. We've been taught backward by design. Knowing what we're testing, so when we create these environment and learning experiences for our children, they fit what they're being tested, yet we don't have any idea, and won't until December. There's lots of room for improvement. Use our knowledge from already administrating the MCAS. This is what I'm asking you to do, instead of making the same mistakes over again for a test that's not transparent. I plead to the Board of Education to discontinue use of the park in the future. Our children deserve better. Less testing, more teaching. Thank you so much for your support. I'd like to thank Governor Baker for having these open forum meetings and you for all coming today. My name is Linda Twist-Joshua, and I'm a mom of a 5th and 7th grader, and I'm on the Halifax School Committee. I ran for the school committee because I don't like Common Core and all that comes with it. In Halifax, more than 70% of those voting voted a non-binding ballot question requesting the governor to repeal Common Core. We join Abington, Brookfield, Hamden, Hanson, Holland, Lakeville, Norfolk, Tewksbury, Uxbridge, Whitman, and Wilbraham in doing so. As you can see, the anti-Common Core revolution is growing and getting stronger. In the description of today's event, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education announced that it's holding a forum to see if we should quote-unquote sunset MCAS and quote adopt Common Core aligned park tests. What a beautiful word, sunset. I think a better word to describe it would be dumping. Dumping the test that helped make Massachusetts #1, dumping the test that was tested and developed by educators and gets tweaked about every 5 years. Now let's talk about adopting park. Like it's a puppy that needs a home. Adopt means to take up, or to start, or to follow. Follow. You're considering following a test that is based on the Common Core standards that are copywritten and privately owned. They're not created as a part of a democratic system and that has not been fully tested. Some of the people grading the test are hired from Craigslist at about $13 an hour, who get paid by volume as well as accuracy. They have college degrees. They don't have to major in what they're grading. But they do not necessarily have to have teaching experience, and they don't even have to come in for a personal interview. I own a business that would never hire someone like that. The publisher of tests, Pearson, just lost a lawsuit for over $7 million for using their nonprofit organization to make money for their profit arm. That sounds a bit shady to me, doesn't it? In New Jersey alone, they had 46,000 students walk out and refuse the park testing this spring. Principals and teachers are speaking out, and some are even leaving the profession because of it. It sounds like we would be adopting the puppy that chews the couch and bites the neighborhood and will now sue you and pees on everything and has fleas. I urge you not to make this adoption. I hope you vote not to adopt park. I hope that you acknowledge that you made a big mistake going down the Common Core path and the decisive coming forward and saying, thank you.
Do you want to testify together or separately? Together and separately? Yeah. Okay. All right, got it. Stephen.
Good evening. My name is Helena Gottman. I'm a teacher of 25 years. I teach in the Newton Public Schools. I've been the building coordinator for MCAS for many years. And this year I've been the park coordinator for my building. Spent 154 hours this year coordinating park. That's a 12th of my year. And during that time, I would normally have been working with teachers. I mentor teachers. I work in classrooms with teachers. And I would be working with students. And I was not able to spend the time doing that. After watching our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders take the park, I'm convinced that it is really a flawed test and that data collected from it are not reliable. If we use a flawed instrument, then the data collected are suspect. So what are these flaws? The read levels of the passages are too high. Some analyses done of the passages of the practice test show that many are a year or two above grade level. For an 8-year-old, reading a passage that would be right for a 10-year-old is quite challenging. Anecdotally, we hear from a colleague whose daughter is a 5th grader that some 5th graders have to use information from a John F. Kennedy speech on the Peace Corps. And we know that although he was an inspiring orator, he was not writing for 10-year-olds. Not only are the passages too difficult, the questions are phrased in ways that are confusing. We have found repeatedly that adults, parents, and teachers find the questions on the only practice test that we've been given by Park really difficult to understand. When an adult with a PhD is confused by questions, surely the problem is with the test and not the taker. The technology interface of the computer-based test was not user-friendly, to put it lightly. If a student got a wrong answer, it would be impossible to know if it was because he or she didn't know the answer or if technology got in the way. An example of the poor design, and I'm an elementary school teacher, so I'll cover my visual. This is the size of the test on the screen. This is the window, and in which 8, 9, 10-year-olds are expected to read 3 passages, 1, 2, 3, toggle back and forth between them. And then they are asked to write in a window that is 1.25 inches by 4 inches. Oh my God. They are asked to write and they can never see the entire text, either that they are reading or that they are writing. None of us as adults, career and college ready as we are, have to do reading or writing under these constraints. Why are we asking 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids to do this? Problems would be set up on one page, questions on the next page. Part A of a question would be on a different page for part B. The qualitative experience of taking the paper versus the computer test is so different that it has to compromise the data that we collect from it. There are major equity issues that surround the use of computerized tests. I don't need to tell you that more affluent students have an unfair advantage over less affluent students. Students in my building who have limited access to computers at home had a more difficult time with the test. But one of the most troubling issues about the PARC test is that it is being administered by a private, for-profit company that has a checkered past. This year, Pearson administered 5 million tests over several states. Are parents comfortable with important data about their children, including demographic data, being in the hands of this for-profit company?
Wow.
The changes announced recently do not address these fundamental flaws in the test. I urge you to put a pause to the project. My name is Katie Collins. I am a 3rd grade teacher in the New Public Schools. I have been teaching 3rd grade for 4 years. And yes, it is very difficult to watch students take standardized tests every year, 8 and 9-year-olds.
I've always tried my hardest to prepare them with good taking skills, going back to the tests, reading, underlining, finding evidence to support your own responses. However, those aren't just testing skills, they're just good academic skills. And this year, when my students sat to take the PARCC test, they weren't able to really apply any of those skills in that situation. My students took the computer-based PARCC test, and during that time, it's the first year that the students start to learn to type, and it is very tedious for students, for 8 and 9-year-olds, to type. Just watch them search and hack. And having them write an open response on the computer, I can guarantee that they did not put in the effort or the time that they could have if they were using a pencil and paper test. They just didn't have the time, they didn't have the capabilities to do it. In terms of reading the passages, this is also the first time we used the computer for the students to research and read long passages on the computer. It was really difficult for them to toggle between 2 passages. And they did have the capabilities of taking notes and highlighting. However, from one question to the other, when they went from one question to another, their notes and their highlighting didn't transfer. So all the work that they did was completely lost. The math tools were not user-friendly. Writing equations and fractions was unfamiliar and was difficult for them. And yes, we were lucky enough to have technology pushed into our schools, but during the testing time, between the mid-year and the end of the year, all of the technology that we used for the Chromebooks was locked down and we didn't have access to it. So the purpose of a computer-based test is to be able to capitalize on things that a paper and pencil test cannot do. And from my perspective, the computer-based test did not deliver. Another issue I have with the PARCC was the language on the test. The questions were so ambiguous that most of my higher level taking mathematicians and readers were calling me over and saying, I don't understand what they're asking. These phrases such as equations, essays, and that's not language that we use in an elementary classroom. We use open responses or number models. So that's the language we're using that's given to us by our curriculum, but it's not the language that they're seeing on the test. Even for our ELL students, having the test read aloud to them as an accommodation, it was robotic. Having them sit there and listen to it, it was almost unnatural for them and giving them just more of a disadvantage. For 180 days, these students are my life. I'm there to teach them, I'm there to guide them, I'm there to be their constant. And now I have to have my heart just break as I watch them take this test and say, I'm not smart enough. And watch them cry and hear the sighs because they don't think that they're good enough to take this test. They stare at the computer screen because they don't want to give up and they don't want to let down their parents and their teachers. I understand that standardized testing is probably not going to go away, but I just cannot support something that is this inaccessible.
And Brian Jansen.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you all for holding these forums. It's so important to take and receive all the feedback from pros and cons sides of the issue. My name is Mike McLeod, and I'm a parent of a 7th grade elementary school student, and most of the pros and cons are heard from people who are much more expert in the subject than me, so I am just going to read to you the proclamation from our town of Hanson, the results of our town meeting on May 4th. This is a letter to the Honorable Charles D. Baker, Governor, State House, reference Common Core. Dear Governor Baker, please be advised that on Monday, May 4th, 2015, the voters of Hanson affirmatively voted a non-binding referendum to discontinue the use of Common Core state standards and the associated testing known as PARCC within the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. In return to using the pre-2009 Massachusetts standards in ELA, math, science, technology, history, social science, and the associated testing known as MCAS.
A certified copy of the vote is attached. On behalf of the residents of Hanson, the Board of Selectmen respectfully requests your support and that of your administration to discontinue the use of Common Core. Thank you for your kind consideration of the actions of the citizens of Hanson.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bezanson, and I am a witness selectman for the last 12 years. On May 4th, at our town meeting, we also had a non-binding referendum. And the town voted by a standing vote, a non-binding referendum to discontinue the use of Common Core state standards and the associated testing known as PARC within the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District and return to using the pre-2009 Massachusetts standards in ELA, math, science, technology, history, social science, and the associated testing known as MCAS, or take any other action relative thereto. It passed, and this letter I have here was sent to the secretary. I hope you got it. You'll get it tonight. That was the official what I had to do. Now I'm going to talk to you from my heart. I've been in Whitman since 1960. I've been a selectman for the last 12 years. I think I have my finger on the pulse of our community. Our community right now is desperately hurting financially and through this process of testing mentally. This is based on the person who just testified about these small children. I'm not an educator, I'm not a school administrator, I'm an average Joe. Those parents have been coming to me and our other selectmen in town, frustrated, crushed by what it's doing to their children. It just seems to me that if parent after parent are coming to the town fathers for relief, we don't really control Whitman-Hanson Regional. They are their own entity. I'm not speaking on their behalf. But it seems to me that if these folks are hurting that bad over these issues, it can't be right. This is the human aspect of this. Now, I totally agree with the honorable representatives that were here and what they said about their communities. Rep. Orwell's district is more like what we have in Representative Deal's district, where I'm from. We had to raise money at our town meeting just to upgrade technology. And we had to cut salaries, cut budgets, just to get this money, just to get upgraded. Now, we did it through budget cuts and through free cash, if you can believe that. Wording is ridiculous, but the town of Hanson did it through a bond. We did it differently, but we did it. It was approximately $1.2 million, 1.45 upgrade to technology, just to get even. It's a blue-collar community. They just can't handle it. And it crushes me, being a person who grew up in this community, went to these schools, and to have families coming to me crushed because they think their children's future is going down the toilet. And I'll give you an example of how children can stutter through school and still succeed, because my son did it. My son, who's now 35 years old, went to Whitman-Hanson. He did not graduate. He did not fit in. He could not do these tests. Now, mind you, these are not the tests we're talking about tonight. So he just left school, did his own thing. He floundered a bit. They had a band. They did all what kids do that age when they're not going to college. It was very difficult. he decided to get his life together, moved to California, got his associate's degree on his own at UC San Diego. Proceeded to get his bachelor's degree at UC Berkeley, and is now working in San Francisco, making much more money than I do. So it's a proof that kids can respond, but you gotta give them time, you gotta give them some compassion, sympathy. You can't do it overnight. Technology is the way to go, and I understand that. But when it's ripping the hearts out of the community, that's not good. I urge you to not accept this Common Core in part, and I urge everyone in the room to send letters to your representatives, your senators, your selectmen, the secretary, the board, and if you don't get any response, send a letter to Governor Baker and ask him to use his executive pen to discontinue this right now.
Let me use this as an opportunity for you and everyone else to remind you to submit written testimony. And if you have budget information that goes with those answers that you'd like to submit from either town, please do. You can also email us, doe@doe.mass.edu. We negotiated 15 more minutes, which will not get through the whole list, but it'll get us through some more people tonight.